The cold decks of the UES Retribution hummed with a sound that was not quite a sound. It was more of a feeling, a deep thrumming that traveled up through the boots of the crew and settled in their bones. Commander Alara Vance had learned to love that hum. It meant the ship was alive. It meant the ship was hunting. On the bridge, the main view screen showed a tapestry of stars, but one star burned brighter than the rest. It was a yellow-white dot on the edge of the spiral arm, the home of the Varick Dominion. Alara did not see a star. She saw a dead waiting to be collected. 5 years ago, the Varick had come to Earth not with weapons, but with smiles. They had called themselves traders, partners, friends. They had offered fusion technology so clean it could power a city with a cup of water. They had offered medical gels that could close a wound in seconds. Earth, still recovering from its own centuries of war, had welcomed them with open arms and grateful hearts. The United Earth government signed 100 treaties. They opened the Sol system's gates. They called it the Great Alliance. The Varick called it the Great Heist. They had not come as conquerors with fleets of warships. They had come as termites. Over 3 years, they embedded their own people in every level of Earth's government, economy, and military. They rewrote trade laws. They bought politicians with invisible currency. They installed backdoors in Earth's defense networks so clever that no human coder saw them for 18 months. When the Varick finally struck, they did not fire a single shot. They simply shut down Earth's power grids, locked its missile silos, and broadcast a single message: your world is now a protectorate of the Varick Dominion. Surrender your fleet or we will turn off your oxygen recyclers. Admiral Marcus Thorne, then a young captain aboard the battleship Indomitable, had watched the surrender from orbit. He had seen the lights of Earth flicker and die, city by city. He had heard the screams over emergency channels as hospitals lost power, as water pumps stopped, as children cried in the dark. He had done the math in his head. The Varick had taken Earth without losing a single ship. They had not won a battle. They had committed a perfect, bloodless treason against the entire human race. That was the day Marcus Thorne stopped being a soldier and started being a promise. The UES Retribution was that promise made steel and engines. It was not the largest ship in the small human fleet that had escaped the Varick's net. It was not the fastest or the most heavily armored. But it was the most dangerous thing humanity had ever built. Because it had been built for one purpose only, to make sure that treason against Earth never went unpunished. Commander Alara Vance stepped onto the bridge and took her station. She was 32 years old, with close-cropped dark hair and a scar that ran from her left eyebrow to her jaw. She had gotten the scar not in battle, but during the surrender. A Varick overseer had backhanded her for refusing to hand over her sidearm. She had kept the scar as a reminder. She had also kept the sidearm, hidden in a false panel in her quarters. It was an old-fashioned kinetic pistol, and she had carved one word into the grip: remember. Status report, she said. Lieutenant Jax Chen, the tactical officer, did not look up from his console. Varick supply convoy, Commander. 3 heavy transports, 2 escort frigates. Course heading for the Kellen mining station. They're carrying refined iridium and something else. Thermal signatures suggest a large power source in the lead transport. Something else, Alara repeated. Something like a prototype weapon. Could be. The Varick had been developing a gravity shear. If they mounted on a frigate, they could crack a small moon. Alara nodded slowly. The gravity shear was the Varick's attempt to answer a question that had haunted them for 2 years. Where was the human fleet? After the surrender, the remnants of Earth's navy had scattered into the dark between stars. They had become ghosts. They had stopped using transponders, stopped communicating on open channels, stopped existing as a coherent force. The Varick had declared them destroyed. But every few months, a Varick patrol ship would simply stop reporting. A supply depot would go silent. A convoy would vanish. The Varick called them pirates. The humans called them the Unforgiven. And now, the Unforgiven had found something worth dying for. Helm, Alara said, bring us to intercept. Silent running. I want 0 emissions. The Retribution slid through the black like a knife through velvet. Its hull was coated in a metamaterial that absorbed radar, LiDAR, and every other form of detection the Varick had ever invented. Its engines burned cold, venting heat into internal sinks rather than into space. Inside the ship, the temperature rose steadily, and the crew began to sweat. No one complained. Sweat was a small price to pay for revenge. On the bridge, the minutes crawled by. The Varric convoy appeared on passive sensors as faint ghosts, whispers of radiation that the Retribution's computers translated into positions and velocities. The 2 escort frigates were older models, their sensor suites limited. They were not looking for a fight. They were looking for pirates. And pirates, in the Varric's experience, were disorganized, poorly armed, and easy to scare. The Varric had never met the Unforgiven. 50,000 kilometers, Jack said quietly. They're maintaining formation. No evasive maneuvers. Elara touched her earpiece. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. We are going to board the lead transport. We are going to take whatever is in that cargo hold. And we are going to leave the rest as a message. The Retribution had a secret weapon, and it was not a gun. It was a boarding tube, a 20-meter cylinder of reinforced alloy that could punch through a ship's hull like a needle through skin. The tube was lined with magnetic grapples and plasma cutters. It was ugly, brutal, and completely inhuman. It was also the only way to take a Varric ship intact. Lieutenant Myra Patel commanded the boarding party. She was small, quiet, and had the fastest draw in the fleet. She had been a security officer on the Indomitable when Earth fell. She had watched the Varric execute her captain for refusing to kneel. She had not cried then. She had not cried since. Instead, she had trained. She had learned every weakness in Varric anatomy, every gap in their armor, every second of hesitation in their reaction times. She was not a soldier anymore. She was a scalpel. Her team was 12 strong. They wore no heavy exosuits, no powered armor. The Varric had sensors that could see through most mechanical systems. Instead, the boarding party wore thin, flexible suits of carbon weave and carried magnetic boots, plasma cutters, and a lot of ammunition. They had trained in zero-gravity combat until they could move through a ship's corridors as naturally as fish through water. They had trained until the darkness between stars felt like home. 30,000 kilometers, Jack said. Elara's hands rested on the armrests of her command chair. Her knuckles were white. Boarding party, stand by. Myra Patel clicked her comm once, acknowledged. The Retribution changed course by a fraction of a degree. The helmsman, a young woman named Sophia Reyes, who had been 12 years old when the Varric came, made the adjustment with the kind of precision that came from 2 years of practice. The ship's path curved like a question mark, looping around the convoy's sensor perimeter. The Varric frigates continued their lazy patrol patterns. They saw nothing. They suspected nothing. 15,000 kilometers. Elara held her breath. This was the dangerous part. At this range, even the Retribution stealth systems could fail. A single stray neutrino, a single reflection of starlight off a hull plate, and the Varric would know they were there. The escort frigates would turn. The transports would scatter. The hunt would become a battle, and while the Retribution could win a battle, it could not win a war. Not yet. 10,000 kilometers. The lead transport grew on the passive sensors. It was a fat, ugly ship, all cargo holds and engines. The Varric had never been artists. They had been thieves. Their ships reflected that. Functional, efficient, and utterly without soul. 5,000 kilometers. Commander, we are at the edge of their active scan range. Elara made a decision. Helm, go to zero velocity relative to the transport. Jacks, prepare to blind their sensors with a focused microwave burst. To seconds only. Myra, the moment that burst hits, you launch. There was no countdown. There was only the silence of the void, and then a single word from Elara. Now, the Retribution spat a narrow beam of microwaves at the lead transport. The Varric sensors screamed with static for exactly 2 seconds. In that time, the boarding tube fired. It crossed the remaining distance in less than a heartbeat, slamming into the transport's hull with a sound that no one in space could hear, but everyone on both ships felt. The plasma cutters ignited. The magnetic grapples locked. And Myra Patel's team was inside. The interior of the Varric transport was dark and smelled of ozone and something else, something organic and faintly sweet. The Varric themselves were tall, thin beings with gray skin and too many joints in their fingers. They had evolved on a high-gravity world, and their bodies were dense, their muscles like cables. In a fair fight, a Varric soldier could break a human in half. Myra Patel did not believe in fair fights. Her team moved through the corridors in pairs, covering every angle, their weapons set to full automatic. The first Varric they encountered was a cargo handler, unarmed and slow. Myra shot him twice in the chest. The Varric fell. She did not stop to check if he was dead. She had learned that lesson.